This episode is brought to you by AWS. Amazon Q Business is the generative AI assistant that can securely understand your business data, summarize results, and streamline tasks. Learn what Amazon Q Business can do for you at aws.com/learn more.
Chronic migraine is 15 or more headache days a month, each lasting 4 hours or more.
Botox, onabotulinum toxin A, prevents headaches in adults with chronic migraine. It's not for adults with migraine with 14 or fewer headache days a month. It prevents, on average, 8 to 9 headache days a month versus 6 to 7 for placebo.
Prescription Botox is injected by your doctor. Effects of Botox may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away, as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness can be signs of a life-threatening condition. Patients with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Side effects may include allergic reactions, neck and injection site pain, fatigue, and headache. Allergic reactions can include rash, welts, asthma symptoms, and dizziness. Don't receive Botox if there's a skin infection. Tell your doctor your medical history, muscle or nerve conditions, including ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, myasthenia gravis, or Lambert-Eaton syndrome, and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects.
Ask your doctor and visit BotoxChronicMigraine.com or call 1-800-44-BOTOX to learn more.
There's no better feeling than a personal win, and the State Farm Personal Price Plan can help you do just that. Talk to a State Farm agent today to learn how you can bundle and save with the Personal Price Plan. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Prices are based on rating plans that vary by state. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability, amount of discounts and savings, and eligibility vary by state.
Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our Quick Publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello and welcome to AI Scouted on Anfield Index Pro. I'm Dave Hendrick, joined as always by Mr. Karl Matchett. How are you, sir?
Full of beans.
Good stuff, good stuff. The Reds are, of course, top of the league, top of the Champions League, and now EFL Cup semi-finalists. And the primary reason that becomes very interesting is because now we have to win it, because if you're in the semi-finals, you might as well go and win the thing. But it also means we will play Spurs 3 times over basically a 5.5 week period. But we'll come to that. We'll talk about the EPL Cup and we'll talk about this weekend. First of all, though, last night we recorded the Transfer Committee podcast. And you were part of the list creating process as a scouted pod. So to update you on where we landed, we went only left back, defensive midfielder and striker, because to do the contingencies would have taken another hour and a half, 2 hours, because of how much we talk about them and how many players we consider and the fact that there's 4 of us on it. So we worked under the assumption that Virgil, Mo and Trent have re-signed contracts. Should we get to the point where one of them announces that they're leaving, we will look at that then. We have our list. We can add more players to them. So left back, we went Piero Hincapié. The feeling was he was the most rounded of the options, the strongest defensively and offensively when trying to look for a player that could do both. Juan Miranda, who was actually a suggestion of yours, he got a decent amount of consideration as well because he's kind of an all-rounder too. Milos Kerkez obviously is the name doing the rounds, but when Dan dove into the numbers on him, what he does obviously show huge potential. For right now, they suggested maybe a player for whom the step could be a little bit too big. So we landed on Hincapié. Would you be happy with Piero Hincapié landing at Liverpool, a player who has been linked in the past?
I would. I think Hincapié is a very good player. No issue if that's who it ends up being.
So for defensive midfield, now I should point out that the process is we all give our involvement, myself, Dan Kennett, and Mo, and then Harry Setti makes the final decision. Harry obviously has taken over from Gags in leading the transfer committee pod. So Harry makes the final decision. It was him that picked these three players based on what myself, Dan, and Mo had to say, and obviously his own views. For defensive midfield, we went with Alan Varela of Porto, Argentine midfielder, who I think would be outstanding in the role. I think he would bring strong defensive ability, protection of the back line. He's obviously very good on the ball as well. He's 23. He'd be a nice little compatriot there for Alexis. One of the reasons we looked at him was that from a price point of view, he's quite favourable compared to some other options. He's also maybe not a player who's going to come in and demand to start every single week. Whereas with certain others we looked at, such as Aurelien Tchouameni, he would have to start every week. So when we were discussing it, the idea of like having a 5-man group, which would be Varela, Alexis, Szoboszlai, Jones, Gravenberch, who you can basically mix and match depending on your opponent, depending on freshness, etc., etc. 5 players who potentially are of the same level, where you can pick any 3. And then, obviously, you'd be adding your likes of Bisetic if he develops, Trainioni if he develops, to fatten that group out. So Alan Varela was the pick as the holding midfielder, which is the one that might surprise some people.
Yeah, it surprises me, I'll be honest. I'm not watching the Primera Liga anywhere near as much anymore. This is very much your domain, I recognise that, but Varela, obviously, watching him as and where the major matches strike up. Defensively, do you think he's the level required if he's like going to be basically the only defensive midfielder? Because like numbers-wise, he never gets anywhere near close to, should we say, the better ones.
Do you know who else doesn't get anywhere near the better ones numbers-wise?
Tell me.
Rodri. Rodri's defensive numbers are garbage. Do you know who else had garbage defensive numbers? Sergio Busquets. You know why? Because people that get themselves caught up in tackles and interceptions are missing the point of the position. An interception is the most flawed stat in football, because where's the stat that tells me, did you stand there and the opponent passed the ball directly to you, or did you have to do something to get the interception? Where's the stat that tells me, did you go for an interception, miss it completely, and leave your team wide open? And we know the tackles are a flawed stat because of, they don't tell me, did you actually win the ball? They just tell me that you disrupted the opponent.
Those who held it.
Lucas Leiva used to have incredible defensive numbers, and he was garbage.
Yeah. No, like I say, I don't watch Portugal football very much at all anymore. It's only if Porto have a notable game, so I'm not going to say yes or no.
I don't blame you. I will say that. I don't blame you for not watching too much, because outside of the big 3 and maybe Famalicão and Vitória and Braga, so you've probably got 6 teams that are worth watching, and really only if they're playing each other.
My biggest surprise is who you didn't pick rather than who you did, if I'm being honest. That's really the surprise of Varela or whoever else it would be, just because of how good I know and how much I know you think of Carlos Baleba.
Yeah, so Baleba was one we definitely did like. There was a kind of 2 schools of thought on him that, he will be overpriced for what he is now, but you are buying the potential as much as anything. But it was also, could we do 2 deals with Brighton in one window? Because the striker we picked is João Pedro. And for me, if I could only have one of them, I would rather have Zhao, because I think his profile is rarer. I also think Baliba could be at a price point where the price mandates that he has to start every single game. And that would throw into question what you're doing with the rest of your midfield, and it would limit the roles for the other players that we have. Now, Baliba is outstanding. The data view was that we still have too small a sample size on Baliba to really be certain about him. But again, they were enthused. But Dan said from a data point of view, looking at the three positions, if they could only recommend one player out of the three positions, and I think we had, in total 19 players, maybe 20 players, the one player they would recommend was João Pedro. That his creative numbers as a 9 were absolutely off the charts. So I think that was a big part of the decision not to go, because I think Baliba would have been the pick. But the fact that it's two players at Brighton, it just makes it very unlikely that A, they'd sell both of them in a window, and B, that you could have the money to get both of them out of there, because it's Brighton and they will negotiate hard.
So let's put Baliba into a bit of context then, as a percentage of Moises Caicedo fee. What would you expect and what would you pay?
So we did factor in, like, in the January before Caicedo went to Chelsea, Arsenal tried to buy him, and there was a feeling among some members of the media, including, I think, Miguel, that a fee around 75 would get him. I think Arsenal were offering 65 at the time. It was like 70 to 75. That's the fee. And then Brighton, I think Brighton threw the toys because of how Caicedo was acting. And then obviously he goes for 111 or 115 or whatever it was in the summer. So there was a kind of a look on Baliba of, well, look, you could get him now and maybe he's 70 and maybe in the summer he's 100 if he has a really strong back half of the season. I can't remember the exact fee Mo put on him. It might have been 60.
What's your upper limit on him that you would?
See, if it was me and we were only buying for that position, we also had to factor in we had a budgeted amount of money. If it was me, I would probably pay 60. I'd probably pay 60 for him.
And you're confident Varela comes for less than that then?
Yeah, well, Varela's buyout is less than that. And I think there's been talk that Porto are willing to do a deal. And we have a good relationship with Porto through Julian Ward. I think the price we put on him was 55 for Varela. But I'd be fairly confident you'd get him for around 45 to 50 because of Porto's financial situation. I think you'd get him 40. Like when we bought Diaz, we got him well below his buyout as well. So I think there's a deal to be done there. Like Porto paid €11 million, including add-ons. So it's still, and that's a season and a half ago. So most of that will be paid off. So it would represent a lot of profit for them, even at 50. The other factor as well was that Baliba would have AFCON, which was something we were kind of trying to avoid.
Very good. Well, they're three strong picks either way, and I think if that amount of money is spent on that amount of quality, there's not going to be very many complaints from all around anyway.
No, we also kind of came to the agreement that we would sell Costas. Easier to sell him in January than Robertson was the kind of logic there, though I think we would all have preferred to sell Robertson. We would sell Endo. And it wasn't because of anything more than wanting those two lads to get to go and play somewhere Costas has spent too long now as a backup and deserves, as an international player, deserves to go start somewhere. And Endo, it was more of a thing where he's just not really trusted by the manager. So what's the point? And then we decided, because we're not going to carry 7 forwards, that the best action with Darwin would be to loan him, hope that he hits form, goes on a run, and you get value out of him, because otherwise your only option selling him to Saudi Arabia. Now, while this was ongoing, there was an EFL Cup game between Tottenham and Manchester United that ended Tottenham 4, Manchester United 3. But the night before, there was an EFL Cup game between Southampton and Liverpool. Now, I know yourself and Guy did the Raw after that, but we haven't spoken since that game. What did you make of the Resi Reds and the seeming devil-may-care attitude that the coaching staff took to this game that saw them end with Darwin, Dans and Jota all on the pitch with Harvey and Chiesa?
Yeah, it was a really interesting training session to watch for an hour. As I said to Guy, we don't often get the chance to see such a lengthy open-air training session, which everyone is invited to. I think for the lineup, most people would be quite happy with it, to be honest, given the names who were rested. It was less strong, certainly in terms of the bench, I think, than I was expecting. But again, no major issue with that. I think they were of the opinion at that stage that if we get through, cool, and if not, bigger fish to fry.
That's exactly how I took it as well. That it was a thing of, look, we'll have a go. And if we don't get through, so be it. The focus is the league and the Champions League. But obviously we get Trent and Joe taken off at half-time and Tyler Morton going to right back. What did you make of Morton? I thought he had a good first half playing in midfield. And look, he's clearly never going to be a right back. But other than their goal, I thought he did all right.
That's the thing. And I said to Guy, I feel a bit sorry for him, really. He did all right. You're absolutely right. He did all right. There's nothing else he could have done, right? For the role that he was in, especially first half, everything is ahead of him, but there's no space. It's a terrible pitch. The conditions were horrific. The players hadn't played with each other. Most of them hadn't actually played for extended periods. No one's got any rhythm. No one's got any touch. No one's got any cohesion between them. What's he supposed to do? His role from that position where he was first half was as the conduit to get the ball moving, keep a bit of tempo going, keep the play moving forward. But there's no space. There's nobody making any runs in behind because there's no space. Southampton had everybody behind the ball. It was really, really difficult for him to impress because all he could do is the routine things from that kind of a role. And when he went second half right back, I mean, again, he did fine. Not for the goal. The goal was poor, but what would you expect? It was both him and Kwanzaa obviously did exactly the same thing.
But they did, but I think Kwanzaa did the right thing, and he was trying to show Archer down the line. And I thought Morton should have been kind of covering the cutback, but he committed to, well, fuck it, we're showing him down the line then. And the two of them got very, very close together.
They did.
And credit to Cameron Archer, it's a great finish, but a right back doesn't commit. Well, maybe Trent does. But a defensively switched on right back does not do what Tyler Morton did. What did you think of Wataru Endo in what was a centre-back defensive midfield hybrid role?
I thought it was a very, very good impression of perhaps Matthias Sammer or someone like that. Look,
boys, a bit like John Stones for City, wasn't it? That same type of role.
A little bit, yeah. It's absolutely fine. We knew we'd have most of the ball, and that transpired that way. And as long as the two either side of Kwanzaa were sort of happy to just not go rampaging all the time, both of them all the time, then that's, it was fine. I think he did well in terms of trying to get a bit more space and trying to move the ball and that kind of thing. And he still won the challenges and all the rest of it. So, yeah, again, he did fine. It doesn't make any difference is the bigger thing, isn't it?
Yeah, ultimately it doesn't. Like, it was just, I thought it was quite fun because it was we were going from a 4-2-3-1 into kind of a 3-diamond-3 with him kind of switching between the two roles. And it was mostly interesting because part of that back three was Trent. But clearly the message to Trent was like, look, don't overdo it. Don't conserve your energy. Just kind of get yourself through 45 minutes here. Don't be going on lung-bursting, leg-destroying runs up the pitch. Especially, as you said earlier, the pitch looked dreadful.
Shocking.
That's a Premier League pitch. That's really, really poor. They might want to have a chat with somebody. That's
they don't
not
need
great at all.
They don't need to. They just need to wait 5 months and then it won't be a Premier League pitch anymore.
That's a very good point. They're already ready for the championship with their pitch. Last name that I want to ask you about, 17-year-old trainee Oni making his first start for the Reds. What did you think?
Hey, it's Austin James. If you're like me, trying to live your best life while living with diabetes, you can relate to worrying if you're doing a good job managing your diabetes. I use the Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor to get real-time glucose readings and see the impact of every meal and activity to make better decisions. The Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor can help me live life with diabetes on my own terms, and it gives me more time for the things I love, like being a dad and a musician. Now this is progress. Learn more at freestylelibre.us.
For prescription only. Safety info found at freestylelibre.us.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon Prime. There's nothing sweeter than baking cookies during the holidays. With Prime, I get all my ingredients delivered right to my door, fast and free, no last-minute store trips needed. And of course, I blast my favorite holiday playlist on Amazon Music. It's the ultimate soundtrack for creating unforgettable memories. From streaming to shopping, it's on Prime. Visit Amazon.com/Prime to get more out of whatever you're into.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. The holidays mean more travel, more shopping, more time online, and more personal info in places that could expose you to identity theft. That's why LifeLock monitors millions of data points every second. If your identity is stolen, their US-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed or your money back. Get more holiday fun and less holiday worry with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
I don't need a VPN. I've got nothing to hide. This is what I used to tell myself before I hooked up with LibertyShield.com. Not only is my home internet now fully encrypted, but I can now access all the websites I want, whenever I want, and do so from absolutely anywhere. As a Liverpool fan, I love to know I can now watch every match, regardless of whether it's on UK TV or not. My Liberty Shield VPN makes sure nothing is blocked and guarantees me super fast streaming speed throughout that match. You can get connected right now with their software package, which includes a 48-hour no-obligation free trial and instant access to their apps for Apple, Android, Fire TV, PC, Mac and Android TV. Or go a step further like I have and get one of their pre-configured VPN routers. These small but powerful devices allow you to easily connect every device in your home to VPN, making it the perfect solution for smart TVs, Mac boxes, and games consoles. Visit LibertyShield.com today and use coupon code AIVPN25 to get 25% off at checkout.
Again, factoring in conditions and pitch and 700 players behind the ball, I thought he did all right first half. Like you saw some nice touches and you saw him try to make a few passes which were not completely routine and to feet. He tried to do a few things. That was fine and good. Also, we saw second half, I thought that he's 17 years old and that was his first ever senior start.
Yeah.
You know, the longer the game went on, obviously he tired, which is fine. I thought he should have been subbed quite a bit before he was. But also he just got completely lost and swarmed on that side of the pitch, which is not his fault or an issue or a problem or anything like that. And it'll do him the world of good to see how it actually happens when, you know, you're not just playing on lovely academy pitches and stuff. But yeah, like he was largely nowhere for the second half, but we had a midfield which was basically James McConnell, him and Harvey Elliott, which is no midfield whatsoever.
Yeah, he did kind of get sacrificed a little bit to bring Harvey a bit more central. and get Harvey more involved in the game. You know, Harvey's a more senior player in the squad than him, so that's understandable. But yeah, like you said, the first half, especially when he was in more central areas, I did think there was quite a bit to like from what he was doing, and there was a bravery about how he was playing. But yeah, like you said, 45 minutes was probably what he should have gotten. But because we had 2 pre-planned subs and we wanted to protect the likes of Alexis McAllister, he did have to play longer than he probably should have. So we go through to the semi-finals and we will play Tottenham. The away leg will be first, which is obviously favourable. That is the 6th of January. And then we will play them on the 3rd of February as well. Now, when I look at the fixtures, that means the away leg is before we play Accrington Stanley in the FA Cup. Now, the 6th of January is not going to fly. That's going to have to be changed because we're playing United on the 5th. So that can't be right. It's going to have to be the 7th, you'd imagine, or the 8th. Because we play United on the 5th. But it does mean we could go fairly strong for that first leg and then rest everybody against Accrington. And then the second leg is after Bournemouth, but before there's a 2-week gap between Bournemouth and Wolves, which I assume is where the next round of the FA Cup would go in. So it'd be before another FA Cup game. So again, we could prioritise it over the FA Cup, which is favourable to us. The other semi-final then is Arsenal versus Newcastle. Arsenal are home in the first leg, and that's difficult because they've already lost up at Newcastle. They lost at Newcastle last year. They didn't perform very well against Palace the other night. Liverpool-Arsenal will be the expected final, but I kind of feel like Liverpool-Newcastle could be the final. Either way, I think it is a strong two games, isn't it?
Yeah, I think
they're 2 ties.
Yeah, I think they're quite nicely set up ties, to be honest. I think most people wanted or most people I spoke to who didn't support one of the teams wanted the possibility of a Spurs-Arsenal final. Not necessarily that that's the best one or whatever, but just to not have them two in the semis, I think is one key. So I don't really care who we were playing in the semis. I think, we're top of everything. There's no real reason why we should care, but probably you want to avoid Arsenal all the same. I'd be fairly confident of going up against any of those sides, but including Arsenal in a final. But over 2 legs, maybe there's a bit more open to how they play on home soil or whatever. So I think it's an interesting pair of ties, but definitely one I think we can have quite confidence at the minute. Obviously, a lot can change in the space of a month or whatever, but at the minute, it looks okay.
It does. It definitely does look okay. And look, if we don't win it, my preference to win it would be Spurs. So that would mean us going out at the semi-final stage. But I'd love to see Ange win something because I love Ange. I'd love to see Son win something because I adore the fella. He's the one Premier League player I'd love us to have had over the last 7-8 years. As great as Sadio was, I would swap Sadio for Son because I think he's a better all-round player. I know that's not a popular opinion and I don't expect people to agree with me, but I love Heung-min Son. And it would also be absolutely hilarious if they won something before Harry Kane wins anything of note with Bayern. That would just be the icing on the cake. So if we don't win it, hopefully it's by losing to Spurs who then go on and win the final.
We don't want to lose a final anyway.
No, exactly. If you get to the final, you just have to win. Losing in the semi-final hurts, but it's not as bad. Before any of that, though, we will take on Spurs on Sunday at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. This is, without question, the most schizophrenic team in the league. So their wins this season, Carl, a 4-0 over Everton, a 3-1 over Brentford, a 3-0 over United, a 4-1 over West Ham, a 4-1 over Villa, a 4-0 over City, and a 5-0 over Southampton. They don't just beat teams, they wallop teams. However, they've lost to Newcastle, to Arsenal, to Brighton, to Crystal Palace, to Ipswich, to Bournemouth, and to Chelsea. They've also drawn with Leicester and Fulham. There is no rhyme or reason as to why this team is the way they are, but we saw it all kind of encapsulated in their performance last night, where they go out and absolutely decimate Manchester United. They tear them apart for fun. They're 3-0 up on 54 minutes, 2 from Solanke, 1 from Kulusevski, some helping hands from United along the way. And then it just becomes like clown show for 10 minutes. There's a simple ball played back to Fraser Forster. He's obviously not very comfortable with the ball at his feet. He dallies on it, then plays a bad pass, which is intercepted by Bruno Fernandes, who puts it across for Xerxes to tap home. 7 minutes later, the ball is rolled back to him. He has eons of time. He could have read a newspaper and still cleared it. And yet, he allowed Amad Diallo to close him down and block his clearance into the back of his own net. Spurs then went and scored a fourth with Son scoring direct from a corner. There was definitely a foul on the goalkeeper, and VAR absolutely would have ruled it out, which is probably one of 3 big decisions that we had in this round of games that pointed to why we have VAR. There's the Arsenal offside goal, their second, this one, and the Kwanzaa Matthias Fernandes wrestling thing. I think VAR gets involved in all of those and changes the outcome of all of them. But United would score on 94 minutes a Johnny Evans header. Spurs are not great defending set pieces, as we know. It was just mental. But it was the same thing against Chelsea, where they roared into a 2-goal lead, looked untouchable, and then just find ways to shoot themselves in the foot. Why are Spurs the way they are? It cannot just be because they're Spurs, because none of the players are still there from when they were just Spurs.
So, again, I've not watched this game yet. I intend to during the course of today. I did have a look at the stats, the game, the scorers, and so on and so forth. I'm absolutely looking forward to discovering how Spurs scored 4 goals from an XG of 0.67. That'll be
tremendous.
That will be fun to see. Look, I mean, Spurs. The first thing I will say is that they have quite frequently had a mixed up defense during the course of this season, and as we know ourselves, that is not always an easy thing to deal with. If your centre backs are chopping and changing all the time, they have looked really good at times when they've had Romero and Van der Ven available. I think last night it was it Dragusin and Gray, was it, centre back?
It was, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's that, but that's not going to account for everything because they haven't played all the league games by any stretch of the imagination, and Spurs have been schizo in the league, as you put it. So the spaces between them, the mentality of the overall team sometimes is obviously not what it should be for match management in that exact moment. So they're obviously really good in transitions and counterattacks, but a lot of the time it doesn't look as if they want to put in quite the same amount of effort getting back at the same pace. And I would also say that the players who they do have in central midfield or the holding midfield positions, whether it's Sarr or Bissouma or Bova playing there a couple of times or Bentancur, a lot of them are really, really good at carrying the ball forward like that 10, 15 yards into space, first of all, especially after they've won possession themselves. But again, then that leaves them out of shape some of the time, out of capacity if they have a transition going the other way or they lose possession or the pass is intercepted or whatever. So they do leave themselves open to counters a lot or being played through a lot. I think committing dumb fouls has at times been an issue as well, particularly when, like you say, they've not been tremendously successful in defending aerials and set pieces.
Yeah, and we saw in that Chelsea game 2 of the dumbest penalties you'll ever see. I still have not figured out what Yves Bissouma was doing for the first one, and Pat Matar Sarr not wanting to be left out with a very dumb foul on Cole Palmer for the other one. Now, I've said this before to you, I really like their squad. I think they've got a really strong squad with, a couple of positions of need in terms of squad depth, left side centre-back, left-back, goalkeeper. And I think they're really well set up for the long term when we look at the age profile of the squad. But at the moment, they're dealing with a lot of injuries. So Vicario's out. That's obviously massive for them because the drop-off from him to Forster is huge. Richarlison is out. Bentancur is suspended. Timo Werner and Destiny Udogie missed out last night but are expected to play this weekend. Wilson Odobert is out. But the three that are really important for this weekend, Christian Romero, who's their best defender, but they do have Dragusin to come in for him. Mickey van de Ven, who's obviously their cheat code with his pace and allows them to play a ridiculously high line. His normal backup is Ben Davies, but he's out as well. So they're having to play Archie Gray at centre-back. Now, I'm a huge Archie Gray fan. I think potentially the best young English midfielder. I think he is the best young English midfielder. But he's played a lot of right-back. Centre-back is new to him. He looked good there against Southampton, but he played there last night as well. And to be fair to him, none of the goals are in any way his fault. He did pass the ball back to Fraser Forster on the second one, but gave him eons of time to get rid of it. The two goals were entirely on Forster and nobody else. But when you're coming up against the Liverpool team with Mo Salah and likely Diogo Jota in that sort of area that you're going to be defending, for an 18, 19-year-old midfielder, it's going to be a big ask for him at centre-back. So that's an area of weakness. Like you said, that midfield, there's just a lot of dumb fouls and a lot of silly things that happen. And I like Bissouma, but he has been central to a lot of silliness this season already. And then, as you mentioned, there is this thing with them where they will rampage forward. And it's basically the whole team. Like, it's everybody bar the centre-backs and one midfielder getting as high as possible, but not wanting to get back quite as quickly. And we see it with Porro, we see it with Udogie, we see it with Kulusevski and Maddison and Brennan Johnson and Son, the whole lot of them. They will put everything into getting forward and then they don't put it in getting back. And if we can stop those counters and get turnovers, it is going to create real opportunity for us to play through them going the other way, because there will be space behind them and there will be space through them because the bodies are not getting back.
Yeah, I mean, it's really difficult as well to pick out like weak points. If you just look at like Tottenham's team, I get what you're saying about the centre-backs. Obviously, we know the third and fourth choice centre, or third and fifth choice centre-backs probably, because Davies isn't there as well. We also had that in our last game, I seem to recall, against Southampton. So that wasn't obviously the easiest way to look at things. But you just pick out individuals there, like Kulusevski, I think has been absolutely sensational this season. Like one of the best players in the league. He's been consistent. He's been creative. He's been a final third threat. He's played in 2 to 3 different roles for them and been really good in all of them. Tactically flexible and does the job the manager asks for. Bissouma, you can pick out like loads of positives of his game. Maddison, even though he's not always in the team at the minute, is creative and he's a threat. Technically really good. Sarr, really good. Loves to take on shots from long range. Ball winner, everything. Like, it's really difficult to look at any midfield three that you want to pick out of them and say, this is easy to get through by this manner. Like, technically or physically, it's not easy. It's the mentality side of it for Spurs. It's the organisation, the cohesion, the understanding of everybody's role in relation to their own and where the ball is on the pitch at that moment. That is where you get through Spurs, not by individual being good or not good, in my opinion.
Hey guys, it's Eddie Gibbs from Anfield Index here. I hope you're enjoying this podcast, and I'm sorry to call time on the show before it ends. In the current climate, it's tougher than ever before to offer podcasts for free. At Anfield Index, we produce over 75 free shows every month, which I'm confident is unparalleled in the LFC sphere. Whilst we'd love to offer everything for free, the production costs now make this impossible. That said, we don't want to follow the model of other channels and lock all of our content behind a paywall. So what we've decided to do is to continue offering every show for free, but cut that offering to 30 minutes on our longer shows. So to get all of our shows in full and enjoy the best of everything we have to offer, we really hope you'll consider supporting the channel and signing up at AnfieldIndexPro.com. For about the price of 1 cup of coffee, you'll get every podcast in full with 0 ads. You'll also get access to our LFC VIP community, where you can enjoy live podcasts, engage with our podcasters, and chat with other Reds in real time. So that website again, AnfieldIndexPro.com. Join today.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.